Rachel here again. This is the next video in our series, Finding Your Way with Charlotte Mason's 20 Principles. Be sure to click through so that you can watch the next video by Amy Bodkin, our special needs consultant over at Charlotte Mason Plenary. She's a wealth of information and she has great insights about homeschooling with special needs. Now, also be sure to please subscribe to our YouTube channel and click that little bell, because the little bell will give you notifications every time a new video is published. I hope you enjoy Finding Your Way with Charlotte Mason's 20 Principles. Hello there, I'm Rachel with the Charlotte Mason Plenary. Thank you for joining me for Finding Your Way with Charlotte Mason's 20 Principles. I hope you enjoyed the video for principle number 1. Today we're going to talk about principle number 2. Children are not born either good or bad, but with possibilities for good and for evil. So over the many years that I've been homeschooling with the Charlotte Mason method and discussing the principles with other parents, this principle seems to trip people up. And I've consistently seen two different kinds of reactions to this principle depending on a person's worldview. Either one, it disturbs them because it seems to contradict the Christian teaching of original sin, or two, it seems to imply that Charlotte is saying that children can be evil. And I'm here to tell you not to worry, because it really isn't either one of those things. This is where the historical context comes into play when reading Charlotte's original volumes. You have to remember that she is writing in Victorian England, late 1800s, early 1900s. And British society was very much a class-based system. You had the upper class or the aristocracy, and you had the lower or working class with a very small middle class in between. And the class scheme was considered a divine order that came from an idea called the chain of being. And this is an idea that started with, you guessed it, none other than Aristotle. Yes, we're going to go all the way back to Aristotle, just like we did in Principle 1. In his writing, The History of Animals, Aristotle proposed the idea that everything in the universe is arranged in a hierarchy. It is a mostly scientific writing, and he places animals at the top and arranged them in order of perfection, and noted that all social creatures submit to a ruler. He noted that man, especially where character is more developed, is the most complete and the most perfect. Well, sometime in the Middle Ages, the Christian Church adopted Aristotle's ideas and stated that on earth God created a social order for everyone and chose where you belonged in that order by choosing the station into which you were born. In the hierarchy, immediately below God are angels and then humans, descending in order of rank from the divine right of kings or queens, as in Queen Victoria, to rule over others. And then there's the aristocracy, the nobles, and so on down the chain. As you get further down the chain, you are more removed from God and therefore less perfect or less worthy and less capable. And this belief continued well into the 19th century. So the class system was very strict, and most people believed that the upper classes were better people. Most of British society really believed that if your father was a moral, upstanding citizen, that you would be too, and the reverse, that if your father was prone to drunkenness or gambling, or if he was an unskilled and therefore uneducated worker, that you would be too. They believed that these traits were inherited and that you were born with them and that they couldn't be changed. But Charlotte, being the progressive thinker that she is, disagreed with this idea. Now let's stop right here and think about the fact that she disagreed. To disagree with an idea that is centuries old, that is so ingrained in your society, is quite revolutionary. She's going against the status quo here, and she is advocating. She's advocating for the lower classes, and especially lower class children. And this is another reason why I love Charlotte and her ideas. She's not afraid to buck the system. So let's look again more closely at how she words Principle 2. Children are not born either good or bad, but with possibilities for good and for evil. Okay, end of history lesson. So let's take a look at what Charlotte has to say about this principle. Basically, she's saying that each one of us has a good inclination and a bad inclination. And her definitive writing on this subject is in Volume 6, Chapter 3. And the whole chapter is free for you to download as a PDF over on the Plenary website. There are 5 sections in this chapter. I'm going to list them. So there's well-being of body, well-being of mind, intellectual appetites, misdirected affections, and the well-being of soul. Now, we aren't going to go into each one of those, so please be sure to read the chapter. But basically, she points to the various areas where parents need to be watchful, and she shows us ways in which we can help develop the possibilities for good in our children, as well as diminish the possibilities for evil. We must know something about the material we are to work upon if the education we offer is not to be scrappy and superficial. We must have some measure of a child's requirements, not based upon his uses to society, nor upon the standard of the world in which he lives, but upon his own capacity and needs. So let's look at the first section, well-being of body. I really like some of the things that she has to say in this section because it relates so well to modern day and how so many children don't get the time out of doors in the fresh air that they really need anymore, and how essential that is. And in this first quote, she talks about how physical education and the time out of doors helps to alleviate anxiety and tension. We do not consider enough that the nourishment, rest, fresh air, and natural exercise proper for the body as a whole meet the requirements of the nervous system, and that the undue nervous tension which a small child suffers in carrying a cup of tea, an older boy or girl in cramming for an examination, may be the cause later of a distressing nervous breakdown. We are becoming a nervous, overstrained nation, and though golf and cricket may do something for us, a watchful education, alert to arrest every symptom of nervous overpressure, would do much to secure for every child a fine physique and a high degree of staying power. How did you like that? Okay, so in sections 2 and 3, Charlotte is talking about how the appetite of the mind is really for knowledge and beauty. And she says she's not really talking about morality here in the sense that we think of morality, but rather she's talking about the intellectual evils that we are slow to define and that we are careless in dealing with. And she's talking about teachers here and what teachers sometimes do that will kill the love of learning in a child. And she says, there is a worse evil. We all want knowledge just as much as we want bread. We know it is possible to cure the latter appetite by giving more stimulating food. And the worst of using other spurs to learning is that a natural love of knowledge which should carry us through our eager school days and give a spice of adventure to the duller days of mature life is effectually choked, and boys and girls cram to pass but do not know. They do pass, but they don't know. The divine curiosity which should have been an equipment for life hardly survives early school days. Isn't that so true? Now, in section 4, she does talk a little bit about morality, and she says that love and justice are the primary moral levers, and she uses the word levers here. She also says that a moral education is absorbed from moral stories, and that canned moral lessons are worse than useless. She says that stories do more to develop a child's sense of morality than years of talking about it will ever do. And here's the quote. Children are not to be fed morally like young pigeons with pre-digested food. They must pick and eat for themselves, and they do so from the conduct of others which they hear of or perceive. But they want a great quantity of that sort of food whose issue is conduct, and that is why poetry, history, romance, geography, travel, biography, science, and sums must all be pressed into service. No one can tell what particular morsel a child will select for his sustenance. And that is why a child needs a wide and liberal education. It's why we set so many different subjects at the feast that is a Charlotte Mason education, so that each child can find his or her own particular morsel that they need. Now, Charlotte wraps up the chapter by saying, I have endeavored to sketch some of the possibilities for good and the corresponding possibilities for evil present in all children. They are waiting for direction and control, certainly, but still more for the formative influence of knowledge. I have avoided philosophical terms, using only names in common use: body and soul, body and mind, body, soul, and spirit, because these represent ideas that we cannot elude and that convey certain definite notions, and these ideas must needs form the basis of our educational thought. Okay, that's where we'll leave it for Principle 2. Now for homework. Please download and read Chapter 3 in Volume 6. The link for that is in the description. And over the next 2 weeks, keep this principle foremost in your mind and try to discern the good inclinations and the bad inclinations in your children and how you might help to develop the good and lessen the bad. And if you have any questions, please post them here or over in the Plenary Facebook group. Just tell me what you think. I love to chat, and chatting with you guys is the best part. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Also, be sure to click the notification bell so that you get notified every time there's a new video in the 20 Principles series. I appreciate you being here. Thanks so much, and I hope to chat with you soon.